Wow. Good afternoon. Come on, guys. Come on. All right. Good afternoon. Awesome. I'm just going to try to figure out how to work this clicker. It's got a green button. Green usually means go. My understanding is we have everyone here from all across Canada. So let's represent. Who's from BC? All right. Alberta. All right. Saskatchewan, you got to represent. Manitoba. Ontario. Okay. I'm from Ontario, too. Quebec. New Brunswick. All right. I see you. PEI. Yeah, okay. PEI, small, but we're here. Nova Scotia. Newfoundland. All right. I've been out there. It's nice. Let's go to the territories. Yukon. Yeah. Northwest Territories. All right. Nunavut. In the house. There we go. We are here, guys. We are here. All right, so we're here. It's going to be an amazing weekend. From what I understand, it's already been amazing. The food was great. I made sure to fill up before I got up here on stage. And I'm here because this is what a mental health advocate looks like. And the same for everybody out here in the audience. So I wanted to get everyone to shout themselves out because I wanted to emphasize that this is a movement and that we are all part of this movement and we are literally changing the world right now. So I think give yourselves a round of applause for that. So where are we? What is your motivation? Now, we are in a movement, and I think that it's very important that when we're in a movement like this, and when we're doing advocacy, it's important that we always kind of keep it in the back of our minds or in the front of our minds what our motivation is. So I think it's important for everyone to think about what your motivation is, because that's the thing that's going to give you energy, it's going to keep you going, it's going to keep your focus. So as I go through this talk, I'm going to talk about a bunch of things, and the first thing I wanted to start with is motivation. The next thing is I'm going to talk about my motivation, my story. My story is my motivation. So where does my story start? I was born in Jamaica, but I've been here in Toronto since I was about 3 years old. So I'm Canadian, let's be honest. But I grew up in rough situations, and I was poor, and my parents split when I was 5 years old, and there's a lot of stuff that was difficult when I was young, but I was still doing all right. And then around age 13, I started to notice that, I started to feel different. I couldn't pinpoint it, but, things started to change for me, and I became this person who was just like, I used to be outside all the time and, running around, and my mom had to scream my name from the window to get me back inside, and I was just super engaged with life, and then I started to withdraw. And my friends would call me, and I didn't want to go out anymore. And then I kind of became, as time went on, I started to get these negative thoughts, and I'm not good enough, and I'm worthless, and maybe, this isn't worth it. I had this terrible anxiety all the time, and, it made it very difficult to speak to anybody. It made it difficult for me to leave my house. It made it very difficult for me to really function well. And I spent a lot of time in my life struggling in this way. And it was about, 22 years old when I was finally able to get the help and the treatment that worked. And I say the treatment that worked because in that 8 or 9 year journey, there was a lot that I tried, a lot that I did, a lot that I tried to access, and it didn't seem like anything was clicking and working for me, and I became frustrated, and at times I became hopeless, and I didn't know what to do, but, I finally figured it out. But 9 years, it's a long time. That's part of my motivation. Now, my mom, as I was struggling, she was struggling as well. Throughout my teenage years, she had struggles with mental health, and she was in and out of the hospital, and, she had a lot of, suicidality happening, and she was really struggling, and she deteriorated, and she started to, hear voices, and she started to see things that weren't there, and she started to have delusions, and she was in and out of the hospital so many times in 2 years that I literally lost count. She was deteriorating really fast to the point where her last hospital visit, when she arrived, my mom, she weighed 85 pounds at 5'10". And I think, is that what it took in order for the system to start working for her? That is also part of my motivation. And I have a brother who went through very similar things to what my mom went through, hearing voices and having delusions. And his onset was a little bit later. It was late 20s, early 30s. And again, he accessed the system, and it didn't quite work out for him, not that quick. And he almost ended up on the street. So he's doing a lot better now. But these are the things, these parts of my story are my motivation. And as I think about this, what I think is, we really tried as a family. We really tried, and I'm sure all of us, those who are, that we have a connection to this mental health movement, we're all really trying, and we got to think about our motivation. This is my motivation. I also want to say that this is a fight. What are we fighting for? When I think about my story, what am I fighting for? I'm fighting for treatment that works. I'm fighting for treatment that's easy to access, equitable treatment. I'm fighting for so many things. We're all fighting for very important things as well. It's important that we remember, what are we fighting for? Me, another thing I'm fighting for is change. And why change? We all know why change. I don't even know I wrote the slide that way. But I think it's important for us to all think about what we want the change to look like. What is the change? And when I think about the change, what I think about is, for me, change looks like, we need to change things because we're losing lives out here. And I know we talk a lot about suicide, and yeah, that's certainly a way that we're losing lives. But when we have mental health systems that don't necessarily work as good as they can, we're losing lives in other ways. People are not, meeting their life goals and their life outcomes, and the life outcomes are not necessarily what people are wanting in life, and maybe they're not able to complete the school program that they want to complete. Maybe they're not able to have, the social experiences that they would like to have. And, so in a lot of different ways, our lives are really being affected. And for me, change is like, I want this to stop happening. Too many people are losing their lives in so many various ways, and there's too much happening. And for me, that is why change is very important. And then we talk about change, we got to think about this whole movement. We're in a movement, and where did we start? So I think about the past and what it was like for me. 10 years ago, we were not having this conversation. Maybe even 5 years ago, we weren't having this conversation. But I remember when I was younger, and I was in high school, it was, certainly we weren't having a conversation, but when I was looking for help, I didn't even know where to go. And now we have more of an indication of that, but still not better. But back then, there was really not much going on in terms of the infrastructure of the mental health system. So, we went a little too far with my slides here. What I want to talk about is the present. And with the present, where are we now? We've done a lot of work. All of us in this room, we're doing the work. People out there in the world, we're doing the work. And we've done a lot. And we've done a lot to, in particular, reduce stigma. We've done so much to reduce stigma, and we've come a long way. We have come a long way. But now, as we've come a long way, there are new things, new, issues, concerns that are arising. There are more young people trying to access the mental health system, but we do not necessarily have the capacity to meet the needs. We have a mental health system that, I think about Canada and, from BC all the way to Newfoundland and up north, and there's so much diversity in this country. Our systems do not necessarily reflect that diversity as much as they need to. And when I say diversity, I don't just think about race. we're talking about sex, we're talking about gender identity, we're talking about sexual orientation, we're talking about ability, we're talking about languages spoken, we're talking about so many different things. We're talking about our belief systems. Our system in general, the mental health system, I think we can do a lot better with that. Another thing is that we tend to focus, I think, in the mental health conversation on a few things like depression and anxiety, and then there are other things that, things like schizophrenia and other things that kind of don't get as much focus. And I think when we do that, we're in some ways saying that some things are okay to talk about and other things aren't. We need to continue to move and continue to keep doing the work. Another thing I think about is, yes, now we hear about it on the news, and the government is giving money for this, and there are these different things happening, and but are young people a part of the conversation? Are we enough of a part of the conversation? And I think about that, and sometimes I think, no, we're not. And I think, we're doing a lot of work, but we need to find a way to get our voices as a part of the conversation, because like we know, it tends to start when we're young. So we need our voices to be a part of the conversation. So then, we're juggling around here. Future. Now, I want everyone to, if this is okay with you, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes and to think about what you would like the future to look like. All right, we can open our eyes. And I think it's very important that we identify what we want our future to look like. We have the past, we have the present, but we need to know what our future is if we're going to move in that direction. And I say that because this whole thing, this movement, this is political. So we need to address it as if it is political. That means we need to talk to our politicians. We need to call our politicians. We need to meet with our politicians. We have to show up to where they are. We have to have a conversation with our politicians, and we need to use our votes. Politicians, that's what politicians ultimately are. They need to get votes. Our votes are weapons. So let's make sure that we show up all the time. Let's use our votes. This is also personal. What that means is, for me, it means that we all have a story, and our stories are very powerful tools in this fight and in this movement. And I think about, I tell my story, and it's done a lot to kind of bring awareness to this cause. And everyone in here has a story, and I think we all need to make sure that we're using our story to get people to rally around us and to help the cause. And our story is something that can, bring empathy to others and, kind of bring them into what we're experiencing. And, even for those who may not have been touched in the ways that we may have been touched, having their empathy will get them on our side for our cause. Also, this is systemic. We live in a society with a lot of layers and a lot of subsystems, and we all exist within these systems in different ways. And I want to emphasize that because there is so much going on in these systems, that we need to work within these systems ourselves in the many different ways, whatever system that we have access to, whether it's the political system or the education system or the justice system, or it could be anything really. We all have access to different things, and we need to work within these systems to start to generate some change. Another piece, we need to generate solutions. I know that we're angry. I've been so angry and so frustrated so many times, still to this day, frustrated. Yes, and and I know that sometimes we complain, and we have a lot to complain about. We definitely do, but we also have the responsibility to help generate some of the solutions that we would like to see. We need to bring those to the table as well. So what is your role in all of this? I think about it. Well, I'll use myself as an example. What is my role? I found myself in the position where I get to come up on stage, and I get to talk, and I get to tell my story. I work in mental health, and so those are a lot of the things that I'm doing. I've had the opportunity to sit on panels and to talk to John Tory and to sit in a room with Kathleen Wynne and to really lobby for this movement, what we're doing. that is the role I've had the opportunity to play. But we all have a role in this. And I think, we need to make sure that, none of us are too big or too small to play a role in this movement and in this fight. And I think we're all going to play a role in a different way, but we all are going to play a role. Now, I'm a mental health advocate, and I also happen to work in mental health. I know a lot of us are young, and we're still in university, and we're still in school, and we're doing these different things, and maybe we don't end up in mental health professionally. But wherever you end up, you play a role. It doesn't matter if you're a doctor, or an engineer, or an architect, or a lawyer, or you're in business and finance, or you're in the retail industry, or you're in manufacturing. Wherever you find yourself, there is a role to play. We all have to continue to fight to do this. And it's a commitment. Advocacy, it's something you do, but it's also something that you live. And it's hard work. It really is hard work. And when I say commitment, there's a commitment to advocacy, but there's also a commitment to self, because it is hard work. So that means that sometimes it might feel overwhelming, and sometimes your emotions are going to go too high, or sometimes your emotions might go too low, and we got to really remember to remain committed to ourselves and to take care of ourselves and to take care of our own wellness. Because if we aren't well and if we're burnt out and we're stressed out and we're tired, we cannot be the advocates that we need to be. So we need to commit to taking care of ourselves and to also commit to each other. Now this one, I like this one, respectful anger. I think Jess touched on this a bit before I got to come up here. And for me, what this means is that, yes, we have so much reason to be angry, but I think we need to be really measured and balanced in how we use that anger, and that, rather than, calling people out, we need to call people in. And rather than starting attacks, we need to start conversations, and we need to bring people together. We have our anger, but we need to know how to use it in the right way. And I think about Black Panther. Who's seen Black Panther? Yeah. So at the end, T'Challa, he says, the wise build bridges and the foolish build barriers. And our anger could be something that can either build bridges or build barriers. So we have to be very responsible about how we use it. And now the last thing I want to say is that this is a movement, and in movements, we have to be respectful, but we must never be tame. And in movements such as this one, we have to always just keep going and to take charge and to take the lead and, work together and to never be quiet. And I think, lastly, we have to always be loud. So let's make some noise for the movement. All right. Oh, my God. All right, let's get louder. How about that? Let's get louder, let's get louder, let's get louder, let's get louder, let's get louder. Let's get louder. So I'm going to leave y'all with that. I really, really hope that everyone remains committed. I know we're all going to remain committed to this cause. We are changing what's happening in our country and in our world. Every single person in this room right now. And man, I'm so blessed and honored to be here and to share this space with all of you, because I know that you are going to be the people who are going to make sure that my children and my grandchildren will always be protected and will always get what they need from our system. So thank you.